Jacoby Tharp didn't just break the world record in the 110-meter hurdles, he shattered it in a semi-final, not even the championship race. A qualifying heat. The kind of race where most athletes are simply trying to secure a lane for the final. What makes the moment even more unbelievable is that Tharp had no idea what he had just accomplished. After crossing the finish line, he honestly believed he had run an average race. Speaking during a live ESPN interview, he admitted, "My last 3 hurdles were kind of trash. I figured I ran maybe 12.97 or 12.98. Broke the collegiate record. Cool. More for tomorrow." Then he glanced up at the scoreboard. The expression on his face changed instantly. The stadium fell silent before erupting into celebration. But before we get to that unforgettable moment, you need to know who Jacoby Tharp really is. Because the world record wasn't the beginning of the story, it was the reward for years of setbacks that almost pushed him away from the sport entirely. The story starts in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Like many kids growing up there, Tharp dreamed of only one thing: basketball. Football ruled Friday nights, basketball dominated the winters, and nearly every young athlete grew up believing that one of those sports would shape their future. For Jacoby, basketball wasn't just a hobby. It was part of his family's identity. His mother, Amanda, played college basketball at the University of Tennessee at Martin. His father, Jimmy, also played competitively during high school. Basketball conversations filled the house, and like countless young kids, Jacoby imagined himself one day reaching the NBA. That was the plan. Until 7th grade. When school basketball tryouts arrived, Tharp expected to earn a spot on the team. Instead, he was cut. No injury. No excuses. Simply told he wasn't good enough. At just 12 years old, that rejection hit hard. The sport he loved most, the one his family had built their lives around, had suddenly closed its door. With no basketball season ahead, he had no idea what to do after school. That's when his middle school track coach approached him with a simple suggestion. "Why don't you try hurdles?" Tharp wasn't excited. In fact, he wanted nothing to do with them. Years later, he laughed while explaining why. He wasn't afraid of losing races. He wasn't intimidated by competition. He was terrified of tripping over a hurdle and falling flat on his face in front of everyone. His coach kept encouraging him anyway. Just give it one chance. One season later, everything changed. Jacoby Tharp became the Tennessee Middle School state champion in the hurdles. In just 1 year, the kid who had been scared to jump a hurdle became the fastest hurdler in the entire state at his age. It looked like his future had finally found its direction. But life had another obstacle waiting. In 2020, as Tharp prepared to begin high school with growing confidence, the COVID-19 pandemic brought sports around the country to a halt. His freshman season disappeared completely. No meets. No championships. No opportunities to improve. An entire year of development vanished before his high school career had truly begun. For many young athletes, losing that much momentum changes everything. Without regular competition, confidence fades. Progress slows. Returning after such a long break often feels like starting from the beginning all over again, while everyone else seems to have moved ahead. Rather than giving up, Tharp returned to basketball. As a sophomore, he finally made the school team he had once been cut from. For a while, he divided his attention between basketball and track, unsure which sport would ultimately define his future. But every time he stepped back onto the track, the hurdles kept pulling him in. Only now, the challenge had become even greater. Middle school hurdles were behind him. High school races featured 39-inch hurdles. College competition used even taller 42-inch barriers, the highest hurdles in the sport. Every level demanded greater speed, sharper technique, and complete commitment. The question was no longer whether Jacoby Tharp could clear the hurdles. It was whether the kid who once feared falling over them could someday become the fastest hurdler the world had ever seen. 3 inches. On paper, that doesn't sound like much. But when you're sprinting at nearly 30 miles per hour and your entire stride pattern has been built around one hurdle height, adding just 3 inches changes everything. Your takeoff point shifts. Your rhythm changes. Your margin for error disappears. For most coaches, a 6'4" teenager facing higher college hurdles would be considered a concern. Long legs. Long strides. Too much body to control over taller barriers. Most would see problems. One coach saw potential. His name was Ken Harnden. An assistant coach at Auburn University, Harnden wasn't just another college coach. He was a former Olympic hurdler and still the Zimbabwe national record holder in the 400-meter hurdles with a time of 48.05 seconds. 4 years, he'd built a reputation for transforming raw athletic talent into world-class hurdlers. When Jacoby Tharp began receiving scholarship offers out of high school, several major programs wanted him. But Auburn felt different. Years later, Tharp explained exactly why he made his decision. Out of all the schools recruiting me, that's why I came here. I knew Coach Ken was going to get me where I needed to be. That trust wasn't built on promises. It became something much deeper. When Tharp officially signed with Auburn, his mother, Amanda, sat down with Harnden and told him something every coach hopes to hear. Do whatever you have to do to help my son become the best student, athlete, and person he can be. That wasn't recruiting anymore. That was a family placing complete trust in a mentor. And Harnden took that responsibility seriously. One detail from the recruiting process reveals just how unusual Jacoby Tharp really was. His basketball highlight tape arrived alongside his track performances. Instead of only watching hurdle races, Harnden saw clips of a 6'4" teenager soaring from near the free throw line and throwing down powerful dunks. While many basketball coaches viewed him simply as another athletic forward, Harnden saw something entirely different. Those explosive legs. That natural elevation. That incredible body control. They weren't built only for basketball. They were built to clear hurdles at world-class speed. Soon, that belief started becoming reality. In 2024, Tharp traveled to Lima, Peru, for the World Under-20 Championships. It was his first appearance on the international stage. He didn't just compete. He won gold. At only 18 years old, he became the under-20 world champion while also breaking a Tennessee high school record that had stood untouched for 42 years. His rise accelerated almost immediately. Back at Auburn, he became the first freshman since 2011 to win an SEC outdoor championship in any event. The hurdling world officially had a new name to watch. Then came 2025. An NCAA indoor championship. An NCAA outdoor championship. A U.S. national championship. Within a single season, Jacoby Tharp had established himself as the best collegiate hurdler in America. That success earned him a place at the World Athletics Championships in Tokyo, his first senior global championship. Against the fastest hurdlers on Earth, 19-year-old Tharp reached the final and finished 6th in the world. For most athletes, that would have been an incredible achievement. But 6th place carries a strange feeling. It proves you belong. It doesn't prove you're the best. You aren't standing on the podium. You aren't making history. You're simply close enough to see it. At that moment, one name still ruled the event. Grant Holloway. Olympic champion. Multiple-time world champion. Owner of a personal best of 12.81 seconds, set at the 2021 U.S. Olympic trials. Only 1/100th of a second away from Aries Merritt's legendary world record of 12.80. That record had survived for 14 years. One great hurdler after another had chased it. Grant Holloway couldn't break it. Devon Allen came within 4/100ths in 2022 and couldn't break it either. Every generation produced another challenger. Every generation came up just short. On the night before June 10, 2026, Jacoby Tharp sat alone in his hotel room. Instead of watching movies or scrolling through his phone, he replayed hurdle races. Aries Merritt's historic 12.80 from Brussels. Grant Holloway's NCAA performances. His 12.81 personal best. Again. And again. And again. He wasn't watching to admire them. He was watching because he wanted to convince himself that he belonged alongside those names. Before going to bed, one thought stayed in his mind. I can do that. What he didn't realize was that the next day would change track and field history forever. His personal best entering the NCAA championships stood at 13.01 seconds. That may not sound far from 12.80. But in elite sprint hurdling, 21/100ths of a second isn't just a small improvement. It's the difference between being one of the best in the world and becoming the fastest hurdler the sport has ever seen. Shaving 0.2 of a second off a personal best doesn't sound impossible, until you remember this is the 110-meter hurdles. You're sprinting flat out while clearing 10 barriers in less than 13 seconds. Every stride has to land exactly where it's supposed to. Every hurdle clearance has to be perfect. Your reaction, acceleration, rhythm, and technique all have to work together without a single mistake. There are no shortcuts. You don't simply decide to run faster. Your body has to move more efficiently than it ever has before. That's why the difference between 13.01 and 12.80 isn't just 21/100ths of a second. It's an entirely different race. When Jacoby Tharp walked onto Hayward Field on June 10, 2026, nobody believed they were about to witness history. Not the fans. Not the media. Not the coaches from the other schools. Not even Jacoby himself. He wasn't thinking about world records. He was thinking about executing one clean race. Before the semi-final, Auburn coach Ken Harnden offered only one instruction. Execute. That was it. No motivational speech. No talk about record times. No pressure. Just execute. Tharp settled into the starting blocks. The stadium grew quiet. The starter raised the gun. Bang. The race exploded into motion. Before we reveal what happened next, think for a moment about Grant Holloway. 4 years, Holloway had carried the entire event on his shoulders. Olympic champion. Multiple-time world champion. The face of men's sprint hurdling. His 12.81 personal best made him the second fastest hurdler in history, only 1/100th behind Aries Merritt's legendary world record. Throughout his career, Holloway often spoke about pushing the event forward and inspiring the next generation to discover what was truly possible over the hurdles. If he had been standing inside Hayward Field that afternoon, he probably would have smiled. Because this was exactly the future he always talked about. A young athlete from Tennessee. A kid who nearly chose basketball instead. A boy who once feared tripping over hurdles. Someone whose development had been interrupted by an entire lost season during the pandemic. Now standing on the biggest collegiate stage in America. Ready to accomplish something no human being had ever done. Before I tell you what happened next, answer this in the comments. If you were racing the biggest event of your life the next day, would you spend the night watching the greatest performances in history to inspire yourself? Or would that only make you more nervous? I'm genuinely curious. June 10, 2026. Hayward Field. Eugene, Oregon. The second semifinal of the men's 110-meter hurdles at the NCAA Outdoor Championships. The gun fired. Tharp exploded from the blocks. Everything felt smooth at first. Then, halfway through the race, something strange crossed his mind. These hurdles are coming up really fast. Maybe too fast. His rhythm didn't feel quite right. The final 3 hurdles felt messy. His technique wasn't as sharp as usual. Still, he kept attacking each barrier until he crossed the finish line. His immediate reaction? Probably around 12.97. Maybe 12.98. Good enough for a collegiate record. Good enough to qualify. Save something for Friday's final. Then he looked toward the giant scoreboard at the south end of Hayward Field. It flashed. 12.76. He stared. A few seconds later, officials corrected the time. 12.75. For one brief moment, the entire stadium went silent. Veteran reporters later admitted they had never experienced anything quite like it. Thousands of people simply froze. Then came an explosion of noise unlike anything Hayward Field had heard in years. To appreciate what had just happened, you have to understand the history. Aries Merritt's 12.80 world record had survived since 2012. 14 years. One generation after another had chased it. Grant Holloway reached 12.81. Still short. Devon Allen ran 12.84. Still short. Elite hurdlers kept knocking on the door. Nobody could break through. Jacoby Tharp didn't just break the record. He skipped right past the 12.8s entirely. He became the first athlete in history to run the 110-meter hurdles in the 12.7-second range. At the same time, he shattered Grant Holloway's NCAA record of 12.98, set back in 2019, by an astonishing 23/100ths of a second. 2 historic records. Gone. During a semi-final. With a race Tharp himself believed wasn't even clean. Moments later, ESPN interviewed him. His first words instantly became legendary. "I swear. I didn't mean to." Then he looked back toward the scoreboard again. 12.75. "I still have more in my legs. I don't even have words. I'm speechless. I don't know." Imagine hearing that. The first hurdler ever to break into the 12.7s. Believing his final 3 hurdles were terrible. Reporters later asked what went through his mind after seeing the time. His answer perfectly captured who Jacoby Tharp is. He admitted he believed something special was possible. He knew he was capable of a breakthrough. But breaking the world record? That wasn't even on my bingo card. Think about that journey. A 7th grader cut from basketball. A kid terrified of falling over hurdles. An athlete whose freshman season disappeared because of the pandemic. A young man who spent the night before watching Aries Merritt and Grant Holloway simply to convince himself he belonged. Now, he's officially the fastest hurdler the world has ever seen. And the most incredible part? He still hadn't raced the NCAA final. He's only 20 years old. He's nowhere near his athletic prime. And his world record came during what he described as an imperfect race. The Los Angeles Olympics are only 2 years away. By then, Tharp will be just 22 years old, competing in front of a home crowd with a world record already beside his name and 2 more years to improve. If 12.75 came from a race he thought was sloppy, what could a perfect Olympic final look like? So here's the question. When Jacoby Tharp steps onto the track in the Los Angeles 2028 Olympic final, does he become the first man ever to run under 12.70 and set a record that lasts for decades? Or does the pressure of competing at home change everything? Drop your prediction in the comments.